Okay, so just
Okay.
to start off, how would you personally describe a whistle register?
Well, for women's voices, high C and above, there aren't a lot of artists today that employ, just in general, from the people that I've heard, it's kind of like a party trick, unless it's really connected with the rest of the voice. Dare say that Natalie Dessay, the French coloratura, put lots of coloraturas into apoplexy when she could sing a high G flat or a high A above high C. That was totally interpolated. It was not written. And girls would go into depression because they can't do it. But they shouldn't do it because it's not written and why. And as a consequence, for Natalie Dessay, she's had several vocal surgeries, which, sort of confirms the old adage, just because you can do it doesn't mean that you should do it. If it is something that is written in a piece of music in an aria, maybe. But even the composer gave the singer some options. In today's um, vocal practices, we tend to worship at the feet of loud and louder, or loudest, or very, very high. But it's not, especially the top, it's not really connected to the middle and the bottom. Everyone wants to live in the penthouse, but they don't want to build the floors underneath. I mean, even Joan Sutherland said the real foundation for her top was in the middle voice. And she started out as a mezzo soprano because her mother thought that high notes would hurt her voice. Well, thanks, Mom. You were wrong. But anyway, but she was right about that. Get the middle voice so that it's even and beautiful and relaxed. 100 years ago, maybe I'm exaggerating, but I don't think so. 100 years ago, men and women would go in every day for a lesson just to work on the vowels, because the vowels, each vowel has a different kind of resistance. It feels a little differently. The closed vowels feel very, that's good. I like that. But the open vowels, okay. That's where you have to learn balance and know how much pressure to put there. You don't need to put as much pressure or any pressure. It has to be balanced, and then it will resonate. As soon as you put a little heat on it, you're compromising not only the quality, but also the pitch. And then it hinders you from ascending the scale evenly. Then you got to push and push and push.
So something I think is interesting, particularly about the classical women, such as I'm trying to think, like Beverly Hoke or Desay or even Claycomb, they said those notes above high C were always like a part of their voice, or the notes above D.
Right.
So there are women you who can or who do naturally have those notes.
But how many of them are there? They are
Mhm.
rare. They are rare. The voice is a product of your imagination plus technique.
Mhm.
Because if you have a good technique, I suppose, I mean, your average lyric soprano should be able to sing a good C and a good D. Some can't, but everybody's voice is different. Everybody's voice is different. The only thing that what I object to is trying to create something that is detrimental, something that is not really called for in the music. And if you can sing Zerbinetta, God bless you. If you can sing the Queen of the Night, God bless you. But you have a lot of people that can sing the high, maybe the high F, but they can't really sing F. They can sing F6, but how's their F5? Or how's their F4? So as they descend the scale, does the voice kind of just disappear? Or can they sing with a full balanced sound as they descend with a little chest register. They're not engaging chest register, but the chest register is there, kind of meeting them and helping them descend the scale. You might have a wonderful voice, naturally very talented, but until you put in that kind of grunt work and have patience building the voice, it's never going to live up to its full potential.
So one of the questions I asked Claycomb was, what is the difference between what she and like Desai or Hulk do as opposed to someone like a Mariah Carey? And she said, let me find it. Let me find her answer. Um, yeah. She basically said the um, she's using more space.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's able, because she's using more space, she's able to use more air and more support and more chord closure than
Mm-hmm.
a whistle note singer. So could you
Right. Okay, what she's explaining to you is that you lift the soft palate, or that the whole idea of an open throat. So you have the sense that it's just a open column. And what is regulating the pitch is the amount of frequency of the vowel. If we think about the vowel instead of air, because when people think about air, then they want to push the air. They want to hold on to the air and push it. But it's not like that. It is regulated. It is regulated, and it's regulated here. People want to regulate it here. And what Mariah Carey does is that there's no resonance. It does sound like a whistle. It doesn't sound released and full throated. It sounds literally like it's pinched. I mean, she sings the pitch. I think Mariah Carey's mother was an opera singer, or is an opera singer, was sang opera or something. So she has those sounds in her ears, but it is the way in which she does it. Until you're taught how to do it, you may not naturally get there. You might get there, but it's not really connected with the rest of the voice. And when you hear some singers singing opera, they're singing the notes, but they sound like a pop singer because it doesn't have that dome on it. It doesn't have that space. It doesn't have that shimmer to it. And that's the difference.
okay. So something else I've noticed, for those whistle register singers as opposed to Desai or Claycomb. So are you familiar with Shantae Moore?
The name sounds familiar.
Okay, but okay, so something Shantae Moore or Rochelle Farrell when she was doing it, when they asked like how did you discover the whistle register, it was always by accident. It was like it was never there. And I think that's different than like a Clay Coma Desai or even like a Denise Williams or something, who she said, I've just always had it. It's never not been there. So why is it that the likes of a Mariah Carey or a Shantae Moore just say, I just happened to find, or they discovered on accident, as opposed to those who are saying it was always there?
Well, I think people who say it was always there, perhaps, I don't know, but they started at a young age, perhaps, singing and maybe not studying, but singing and singing perhaps classical music, because that's the only music that would take you to those realms. We have in this country so many different musical influences. We've got hip hop, we have rap, we have country and western, we've got rhythm and blues, we've got all these different vocal influences that it's not surprising that if you're not studying classical music, if you're not familiar with it, that one day you open your mouth and you're imitating somebody. You say, whoa, well, where'd that come from? But it's because there was no tradition of going every week to a voice lesson and having someone take you through some scales and building the voice. It happened by accident because one day they opened their mouth and there it was. It doesn't mean that it wasn't always there. It's like Columbus discovering America. He really didn't discover anything because people were already here. So it was already there. They just hadn't ventured there before. That's my opinion.
Shantae Moore, Mariah Carey are like the premier whistle tone singers in non-classical music. And something that I think is different, again, is Mariah says, we can't control it. And I know Shantae and Mariah have also said it's not always there. So I'm going to play us a clip and of what it generally sounds like as opposed to what it sounds like when it's not there. And maybe you can help me understand what they're trying to describe. 1 second.
You want to know what happened? The way she produces, the way she produces her voice is a trick. It's a trick, and it is produced through manipulating the vocal cords. That's all. And so sometimes it works if you're rested. Okay, but if the voice is a little tired, those muscles say no. Because there's different muscles that control chest register and head register. And they are supposed to blend. They're supposed to be like an even. It's like a relay race. One sort of hands off to the other. So at the very top, you might have just little remnants of chest register. And at the bottom, you have little remnants of head register. So that it's like a cohesive whole. But when you go in there and you just literally squeeze, that is not a true tone. That is, I don't know how you would describe it, but it's not connected with the voice. And therefore, it is unreliable. And it's not connected. That's not full-throated by any means. It just sounds like somebody's being pinched. But really what is being pinched are the vocal folds. And so you see, if you continue to do that, how the vocal folds, Natalie Dessay, has had at least 4 vocal surgeries. The definition of the vocal cords are twin infoldings of mucous membranes. For a woman, 1.25 centimeters. For a man, 1.75 centimeters. Tiny. That transverse the larynx from front to back. They go slowly for the lower pitches. They go faster for the higher pitches. They are not to be abused. They are not to be manipulated. It is a complex series of thoughts and then action. Thought and action. The voice is different from any other musical instrument. It responds directly. There is no middleman. It responds directly from your thought. If you have the right thoughts, you're going to get the right sound. You got bad thoughts, it's going to have bad sound. And when you have talent that can allow you to do that, you shouldn't do it. And I don't know what pitches those were. Do you know what those pitches were?
Because she generally does a C minor scale up to double high C.
All right. That is an invitation to trouble. Because the way she is doing it, at least Natalie Dessay, when she was singing high A's, high G flats, or whatever it is, it was connected to the rest of her voice. It did not sound like a totally different voice. When she's singing those whistle tones, That is a completely different sound. It's not, she can't graduate and bring that sound. She can't descend with that sound because it's not connected. It is totally disconnected and squeezed. I mean, she's a young woman. Maybe she can do that. But right now, she says she has good days and she has bad days. You know, stay with those bad days. Don't do that because you will eventually be in jeopardy of nodules or worst, impacting the notes that she does sing well in the rest of her voice.
Which is actually my next question. I'm gonna play this Mariah Carey clip.
You make me feel so.
Just for preference, I want to say that she took that whistle tone down from double high C, so C7 to C5. And I
And
know,
then she stopped.
mm-hmm,
And then she stopped. And when she started with a little with tension because you could hear some air escaping and an H. It was not a smooth transition.
mm-hmm.
It was not a smooth transition. The acid test is a smooth transition. Why? I mean, I understand why. I understand why, because it gets people talking. It gets attention. It gets, records played and records sold, or however way the business works these days. But it is not healthy. And when was that recording made?
She was 20.
Yeah.
So
How old
this
is
is
she now?
1991. She's sources vary, but she's 53 or
Yeah.
52.
Right. She's not doing that anymore.
Well, she can't really do much of anything anymore.
And
And
that, what you just played, is the reason why.
Claycomb also said, when talking about the pop singers in particularly, they bring that sound like very far down, and it will end up destroying the notes underneath it. So like you're
You
not
know
supposed to
why?
bring
You know
why?
why?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not free.
Mm-hmm.
It's not free. It is manufactured, it's pinched, and it is a party trick, and you cannot descend into your regular voice without it sounding like a train wreck. It's going to go snap, crackle, and pop, 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 because it's not legit. I mean, that to me is the tragedy. They have these great voices, but they are abusing them, not knowing that they are abusing them. They just think, well, I can do this, but at what cost? Because
Mm-hmm.
if that was a true, if that was a true sound, it wouldn't be C7 by any means. It would maybe an F, maybe a G, maybe. I mean, even Joan Sutherland. I mean, she had a G. She sang this aria in Esclamande. But there is
Mm-hmm.
a version, or the composer gave the soprano, instead of a high G, gave her high E, instead of having to sing the G, sing an E.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not necessary. If you don't have healthy vocal goals and healthy vocal practices, you will be in retirement. So get the money and run, because you won't be singing. You won't be singing well. You won't be singing well. And that has to be frustrating and depressing for these girls who have had such fame and attention and adulation, and not be able to do that anymore. To have your whole identity sort of wrapped up in this party trick and not being able to sustain it. That's not, I mean, so people say, well, you're getting old. That isn't, no. Bad singing is just bad singing.
So you're saying that the way those notes, so the notes she's supposed to have, or these women are supposed to have, they bring that tension all the way down, and that's what
Stop.
kills. Okay.
Yes. but I dare say that they even start with tension.
Mhm.
That is a shortcut, and that's a fast way to not singing well into your 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. Because you're taking years off of your voice because you're using different muscles that are not designed for those notes.
Mhm.
And those muscles, as you celebrate birthdays, are going to say, no, we're not doing that.
So I guess my question is, I read different books. About most of the pedagogy books I read come from the 19th and early 20th century. So I know they say for the women that can, the rare group of women that can, no woman should really be singing above F or G. For those who can, would you say that like that's like the end of the natural voice for a
Well, which
woman?
F, what F or what G?
This is G above high C. So the I know like Garcia has in his book, like for the women who can, the rare group of women who can, no woman needs to be singing above G. And for some reason, I think G might also be the highest written
Yeah, that's
note.
in Esclarmonde. They
Yeah,
are,
and I
I forget
think,
the name of the aria, but it's from the opera Esclarmonde.
and then I think Mozart wrote a G as well, but I think
Mhm.
G seems to be around the end.
I mean, I don't mean to be ghoulish,
Hmm.
but if you took an autopsy and looked at vocal cords of women about the same height and about the same size, and you looked at them, you wouldn't be able to tell the mezzos from the coloratura.
Hmm.
They're the same size. They're the same physically. They're the same size. Maybe you might have some girls that are real small or women that are real tall, but the vocal cords don't really change. I mean, I get 1.25 centimeters. So, what is the voice? The voice is the product of your imagination and your technique, not your talent, but your technique. So, what do you believe is true about how to produce the voice? If you believe that the voice needs a lot of squeezing, a lot of pushing, yeah, you may not be a colorature. You may not even be a good mezzo. I mean, who knows? What needs to be, I think, impressed on singers, no matter what they're singing, what the voice category is to sing with resonance as opposed to singing with trying to power the vocal cords, to fire them up to do something. And that's why you have these issues. And because you have sympathetic vibrations, when you listen, Malik, when you listen to people sing, don't you get some sort of visceral something? You know, you either feel good for them or you feel a little on edge for them, or you just think, I'm turning this off because
Yes, yes.
yes, you have sympathy. There is empathy. When you hear someone sing, it's not necessary to sing a high G. And even I think Gounod, did Gounod write or Massenet? Massenet wrote Esclarmonde. Even Massenet gave the soprano an alternate. You have to sing the G if you don't have it. Here's an E flat. Good luck. And the only reason pop singers do it is to put themselves on the map. It is
Mhm.
more important to me that they sing everything underneath that. Well, how does the rest of it sound?
So speaking of that, another question, or I don't know if I've asked. So in those clips with Mariah and Shantae, we heard a lot of air when they would sing those notes. We'd never hear that kind of air with some of the women you just mentioned when they're singing in that same range. Why is that? Because the pop music fans tell it they think that's a stylistic choice.
Oh, no, no.
Yeah.
It's bad. It's called bad singing. There is, what is it? It is a It's part of the technique, vocal technique, called the coup, C-O-U-P, de glott, the glottis. The glottis is the variable opening between the vocal cords. And so when you hear pop singers or Sade, kind of this sort of like, I think maybe they think it's sexy. Maybe that's it. I don't know. But it's like the air that escapes before the sound. The coup de glotte is just the opposite. Eh, 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 ah. That's why you don't hear any air, because they started with the vocal folds already closed. The vocal folds close when you speak. The vocal folds close when you sing. And you keep them closed. So there's no excess. The air is for you, the singer. So you can sing long phrases in a single breath. But nobody teaches this. I'm sure nobody's ever said coup de glotte.
Yeah.
I'm sure they haven't. That is revolutionary. But when you hear singers using it and employ it, it is the difference between night and day. You start with efficiency and you end with efficiency. That takes a minute to learn. That takes a minute to learn because of what you're thinking, of what you believe is true, which is not true, and just the discipline of not pushing the voice and allowing those muscles to settle, that they will help you and not be a hindrance to you actually ascending and descending the scale with an even beautiful tone. So that's why you hear these girls, maybe, I don't know, maybe, I don't think the guys do it so much, but maybe they do, pushing a lot of air. They don't push any air. That air that you take is for you. It's not for the audience to hear.
So, and how does air help limit or shorten one's vocal health?
If you're pushing a lot of air, then you're not getting any vocal efficiency, which means you're going to have to push the voice or push the vocal cords to give more sound instead of just kind of staying on it and having resonance. Instead, you hear, oh, oh, and having that, those literally sound waves. When Price they did a documentary on the making of Lincoln Center, and she opened Lincoln Center with Samuel Barber's Anthony Cleopatra, and they filmed some of the rehearsals. And she was midway upstage, standing not on a pyramid, but on something near a pyramid. I don't know. She hated those pyramids. But she was halfway upstage. She opened her mouth and it was just sound waves of resonance. It was mind-boggling.
So, in some books, they said that the pharynx constricts or narrows at certain transition points in the range, using less space than the rest of the voice. It says, but the transition points for women generally are listed as B5, so B below high C, and most commonly D6, slightly less frequent. It says getting much higher above these zones without going into whistle register requires a more reinforced falsetto. Now, before I ask that, I know like some of these very high sopranos, they often have mentioned that D6 was a hard note, but like the E, the F, the G, that was fine. So could you just briefly help me understand what they mean by that?
So what they're talking about is another passaggio. And passaggio is this narrow passage. Now I think that there's like two or three within every octave, because if you start at middle C, there's a passaggio for women. There's the passaggio. There's this E natural, F sharp, sometimes G, and here's another one. And a passaggio, what happens is that it has to get narrow. What people want to do is go blasting through there. and they want it to feel a certain way. But it's like an hourglass. Below it, it can be kind of full, but going through, it's very narrow. And then when you come up on the other side, then it can fill out again. What I'm saying is generally those notes, but it could be a note lower, it could be a note higher, depending on the person. But through those passages, you've got to go a little lighter. You've got to go with a little bit more spin, a little bit more head register. And then it kind of settles. I mean, it's like going through the Suez Canal. I don't know. But it is like you've got to take it easy through there and not push the voice. There are places where it can kind of settle. And then there are other places where it's narrow. It's a narrow passage because it's a connecting point to the next level. And you can't go through there, with a steamroller. It has to be refined. You have to spin your way through those passages. But that is what you're describing.
Okay.
The people want to feel it a certain way. They want to feel secure. And the only way they want to feel secure is through pushing. You can't push. You've got to spin your way through.
Okay, so that's why, like Laura would say, the D6 was hard, but the notes after it were better. So it went narrow, and then okay. All right, makes sense. Okay, so I think, yeah, I got it. Because I think the other thing I've also read was that, and the studies we do have, like once you get past a certain point, like you can't really observe what's going on when people are singing that high because the chords are just extremely stretched and they're vibrating too fast to really figure it out. So that's it. So let me stop this. Oh, I do have one more clip for you to listen to.
That was the same thing. And when she came back down to earth, that may not be the story in a few years, because that was all just, I mean, she's a talented person. And say, this is the problem. I mean, it's a shame. Just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should do it. And because she can do that, she is going to be encouraged every time she stands up to sing. Do that, do that, whatever that was. And it's going to get harder and harder because it's manufactured. It's not natural. And just like the other girls who say, well, some days it's good, some days it's not. The days that it's not are going to increase. And it's going to impact the rest of the boys, because there's so much tension in order to achieve that. It's really not worth it. But nobody, who is telling her to stop?
So how can you
Nobody.
identify the tension when these people are singing that high?
Identify the tension. They are literally tensing the vocal folds.
Mm-hmm.
They are literally tensing the vocal folds.
Can you see it like in their face or in their necks also?
I don't know. I mean, it depends. I mean, they may not show it on their face, but they are manipulating the vocal folds. The vocal folds are not designed to do that. They're not designed to do that. They are designed, seriously. You think it's there. You think it's there. There's no middleman. It's not like any other musical instrument. Every other musical instrument is external. There is a middleman, and that's usually your hands, right? If you're playing the piano, or you're playing the violin, or you're playing the guitar, or you're playing the flute or trumpet, there is a middleman. With the voice, there is no middleman. It is your imagination. And your imagination, I dare say, fuels everything. But there's some distance between you and the other instrument. With the voice, there isn't. And so if you want to achieve those notes, the only way you can do it is this way because you're not using any support. You're not using any support. The voice, it doesn't have any resonance. It has no resonance. It's not loud. It's not full. It is totally manufactured. And you hear it and it's wow, what was that? But when you understand the damage that the person is actually, and the harm that they're doing to themselves, because they are not aware that that is wrong because they can do it. It can't be wrong because I can do it. But for how long and at what cost? And it is going because you're starting with so much tension. They're even perhaps starting with tension in their regular singing range. But then as they continue up the scale, you can hear it getting tighter and tighter and tighter. That's not, I mean, if you listen to a classical singer singing those pitches, it's got a completely different sonority.
And this is the last clip, I swear. And
that was a full-throated sound.
really?
That was a full-throated sound because it was like this.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of like sort of like a mosquito.
Mm-hmm.
It had resonance and it was as powerful as the rest of the voice.
Okay.
That was full-throated. Who was that?
Mado Raban. So she could go up to double high C. I know you mentioned like some women could sing that. They shouldn't, but they could. And
Well, you
something
shouldn't. You shouldn't. If it's not, if you cannot sing it like that, if you can't sing it like that, if you sing it like it's some sort of like a mosquito, but that had resonance, that had vibrato, that sounded like the rest of her voice. Because what happens with those whistle stops? Whistles don't have vibrato, and they just. I mean, I don't know. That is impressive, but I mean that's still rare.